Hello and welcome to the Miami Showband Peace Center Online, a truth and reconciliation platform project. Continuing our Speaking for Myself series, our witnesses today are Colin Smith, who was critically injured in the terrorist attack on the Heights Bar in County Down village of Loughinisland on June the 18th, 1994, and Stanley McComb, whose wife Anne was murdered on August the 15th, 1998 in the Omagh bombing. Our panelists are John O Mahony, who was a member of An Garda Siochana for 40 years up until June 2017. John served in all ranks up to Assistant Garda Commissioner, and during the course of his career, he was involved in over 100 homicide investigations. John works closely with victim support groups, including AdVIC. We're also privileged to have the renowned former RTE broadcaster and author, Gareth O'Callaghan, with us today. Our executive producer and co-founder of TARP, Eugene Reevy, joins us from Whitecross in County Armagh, and the Truth and Reconciliation Platform ambassador to the UK, Joe Campbell, joins us from London. You're all very welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll invite Colm Smith to tell us about the terrible event that changed his life forever. Whenever you're ready, Colm, thank you.
I was 23 when I was in my local pub in Loughinisland. I was there with a great man called Malcolm Jenkinson. So Malcolm would have been my best friend's dad, and I was just home after first year at college. I was going to college down in Limerick, so I went up and, like all young students, looking for a wee job for the summer to make a few bob and stuff like that. So I was helping Malcolm out during that week, and on that Saturday we were painting a bit of facey board at his house. And I would be a great man for the sport. Love all types of sport, really. So I can remember saying to Malcolm that day, look, do you fancy going out tonight? There's a few of us going out and we're going to watch the Ireland-Italy game. So it was the first game in the World Cup in '94 for Ireland. They were playing it on the East Coast. There was going to be a great sort of fan base over there. And this was just after, this was the World Cup after Italia 90. So we were all in great sort of mood that maybe we could do this again and have another great run. The following day was also Father's Day, and that also sort of put an extra spin on it because my best mate was over in England at the time. He was working over there for the summer. So he was sort of saying to me, look, make sure you take my dad out for a pint for Father's Day, because if I'm not there, he won't go out. And that's how we ended up in O'Toole's. The real name was the Heights Bar, but it was always run by the O'Toole's family, so that's what we always knew it as. And we landed in there that evening and pursed ourselves up in the bar. And if I describe to you what O'Toole's is like, it was about 15, 20 feet wide and about 35, 40 feet long. So a very typical little, typical Irish pub really in the north. You know, that way the lounge bar was separate and closed off, and that was only ever used on a Saturday night. But during the week, you just had this little bar and a wee fire and a wee sort of bar there where you might get 5 or 6 people standing around it, and a few seats down towards the door when you come in. When you come into the bar, it was sort of right up in front of you like that. So you were looking vertically up towards the bar itself on the far right-hand corner. So we pursed ourselves there, watched the first half. Houghton scored that great goal, did his wee roll and all that sort of thing. And we were right in the moment. And I can remember we just came back after half time and sitting at the bar. Malcolm Jenkinson was here on my right-hand side. Frosty Rogan was sitting on the left. Down near the bar, Barney Green was there with Dan McCraner and he, and then several others in the corner on the far left there. And literally the second half had just started. And we'd been joking in the first half with Frosty because he'd just come back from Spain that day. And he'd actually just popped down to pick up some GA tickets for, I think it was a down match on the next day, or it could have been a club final or something like that maybe Loughinisland was involved in. And he had mentioned that, well, actually it was June, so it wouldn't have been. But anyway, he had mentioned that he had bought fireworks home with him from his holidays in Spain. Now, this was the 18th of June. So we were all sort of giving out to him like that. We go, what sort of needs it are you buying fireworks so early? And that's the first thing that came into my mind when I seen flashes in the mirror in front of me. So it was a very traditional bar, had the mirror across it with all the optics in front of that as well, and the TV up in the corner. And the first thing I can remember is just seeing these flashes going off. And immediately thinking, Frosty's let off some fireworks, like what sort of, this, and, and that was that felt as if it took a million years to have that thought. It was probably less than half a second, just like that, it was there and gone. And very quickly you realized that it wasn't that at all. And if you grow up in Northern Ireland, you just know that your pub's being hit. It's almost a sixth sense. We've grown up in it, all our lives, and we just knew, and I just knew. And we turned, and I looked at the door, and Malcolm was there, and just seen the two lads wearing their boiler suits and their balaclavas. And I could just make out the guns almost by sense rather than really seeing them, but I knew they had the guns. And at that stage they were firing. But your mind is in this slow process of trying to understand what's going on around it. And I just remember saying, we've been hit, and which was the common terminology we would have used up north for we are being attacked. And at that moment, Malcolm sort of turned around to me and sort of pushed me back off the stool. We were sitting on high stools. And Malcolm, I turned 50 this year. So Malcolm was 53 at the time. So pretty much around the age I am now. I was only 23. So it's a long time ago. So he pushed me off and the stools slipped over and we both fell back towards the ground. And I can just imagine, I can remember as I was falling back, I could hear these thuds on my thigh. And I just knew. I said, I've been shot. Now, I felt no pain. This wasn't movies at all. This is the complete opposite of anything that I'd ever thought about in terms of what a movie or what it feels like. But I just felt the thuds hitting my leg and I knew that it could be nothing else. It had to be the fact that I was shot. As soon as I hit the ground, it felt like the silence was already there. In other words, these guys had been in 20 seconds, 30 seconds and gone. It happened so quick that you don't even realize what's actually happened to you. That sets in afterwards. And I suppose one of the things that really stuck in my mind was I could just feel the weight of Malcolm. And it was not a natural weight of a living person. It feels heavy. And when they say it, when people talk about a dead weight, I know what they mean because I just knew something wasn't right. And he was that heavy. And because he wasn't responding to me trying to move, that really worried me. And I had to almost move him to the side to try and get out from underneath Malcolm. And when I did that, I could see almost instantaneously that he was going to die if he wasn't dead already. It transpired that he had been shot once and it hit one of the arteries in his leg. So he would have died very, very quickly. I just did my best. I held him in my arms, knew he was dying, and I prayed the Our Father over him. I didn't know what else to do. We were brought up Catholics, and in those days I still would have been a practicing Catholic. So for me, it was like, I need to give him last rites in some way, shape or form. And I remember doing that and then looking around me. And at this stage, I wasn't even quite sure what was going on with me. I mean, I still wasn't feeling any pain. I still wasn't really conscious of how badly I was injured. But I remember looking around and all I could see in front of me was towards the door. And the guys that had been shot nearest them had all fallen together, sort of into the center of the room. And all I can remember seeing is a pile of bodies the blood sleeping out onto the floor. I mean, the blood was just moving in all directions, and that really horrible smell of burnt matches, which is essentially, the cordite, as you later found out, but it just smells like burnt matches, but mixed with this heavy odor of, I think I've been told later, it's probably like whatever the chemicals are in our blood when they're exposed to the air and all that, it's almost like a metallic sort of thing going on. And I knew what was happening, and I knew what was happening in front of me. But I still couldn't process it. It was like I was almost an outer body experience in a way. There was a few guys behind me who were trying to help Frosty. Frosty had been really badly injured as well. And they were working, and I could hear them behind me. I couldn't really see them because of the way I was lying. And then as time passed, obviously, I think that a couple of neighbours arrived in, who I still meet to this day, and they suffer, unbelievably with the memories they have. But I can remember the sort of cops coming in, and those big green uniforms that we all remember, and you're lying on the floor, and these guys are all 6'5" type thing, like it's a weird sensation, But anyway, one of the cops come in, and he sat down and sort of had a look. He had a look at what was sort of my situation, and started to work on my leg. And at that stage, it was only then that I sort of started to realize what was going on. So I'd been shot 4 times, once in the abdomen and then 3 times in the legs, and particularly on my right thigh. A lot of that had been blown off and stuff, but the way the bullets had gone in and gone out and stuff like that. So they were just bandaging me up. But in typical sort of Northern Ireland fashion, it was a case of, well, you'll be grand, you're not going to die, so let's move on. And they lifted me onto one of the little chairs. And I'm not sure, to this day, I don't know whether it was a nice thing they did for me or maybe one of the worst things. I mean, they didn't know the difference. But because I was sitting there, and obviously they were working on people that were in really critical situations, I had to sit and watch all that. And I can remember just sitting there, and I remember one of the lads gave me a cigarette. And again, it's one of those surreal things that really, if you're having a bad day with survivor's guilt, these are the things that really pull at you, because you're going, here I was sitting there, in no danger of dying. I'd lost a couple of litres of blood, but essentially I wasn't going to die. And I'm sitting there having a smoke while there's 6 men dead beside me. 2 or 3 others, there was 6 died, 5 were injured, and 4 of the lads, there was only 15 of us in the pub, 4 of the lads didn't suffer any physical injuries. And I was just sitting watching as they tried to save all of these guys around me and the blood and the bodies, and I'm sitting there having a cigarette. And it was the most surreal and awful experiences, I suppose, that I can, and I can ever, and to me, the hardest thing still to this day is the fact that, that there's the door, there's where those lads came from. And the guy here and the guy here both died. And I'm sitting in the middle of them, and I live.
Thanks very much for your great bravery in giving that testimony, Colm. And you raised a number of issues there, particularly mental health issues, which I'm sure Gareth and John will come back to a little later on. Before we do, we'll just ask Stanley to tell us about the terrible experience that he had and that changed his life and his family's life.
Thank you very much, Stephen. And Colin, I do sympathise with you, and I know it can be very emotional even listening to your story. I do know a wee bit about the Loughinisland, because when you're on YouTube, you go through these things and you look for all these, because we're all in the same situation. Fortunately, I didn't get injured physically, but I know where you're coming from in the mental aspect of it. But getting back to the Omagh bomb on the 15th of August 1998, I was in Scotland with my eldest son, Clive. We're both in a pipe band, competition band, and my youngest son was at home with his mum, Anne. And Anne she normally didn't work on a Saturday. She just worked 3 days a week in the fashion store and the Watersons in Omagh. And I've been going to Scotland for years, more years than I care to remember, but probably 20 odd years then. And it was just a done thing. You're away for the weekend, and same things. Go on a Thursday, have a few pints on a Thursday night, enjoy yourself. Friday's the day for you relax, no drink, because Saturday's your big day. This is something that you've prepared all year for, and you'd have your phone calls to make. I mean, those things as mobile phones then. Well, there were mobile phones, but not to the extent that we have today. Everybody has a mobile phone, but I didn't have one. And I'd always say to Anne, I left Anne off to her work that Thursday morning before we headed off to Scotland. And I says, I'll give you a ring on tonight when she don't bother. Ring me tomorrow night. And I says, no, I'll ring you tonight and let you know how we get on. So that was okay. I rang Anne Thursday night as usual. Chatted, and I says, I'll give you a wee buzz tomorrow night. I says, no, give me a ring on Saturday and let's see how you get on. So that was okay. Saturday came, we were all in Glasgow Green at the competition. Well, as you would well know, thousands and thousands of people there. And as you were saying, about music, there's no religion in music. Music is music, and nobody asks what you are, who you are, or where you're coming from, or whatever. Because I have a lot of friends in Southern Ireland in pipe bands, fantastic people, lovely people, and we were just good friends. But anyway, we were on to play at about 5-3, and we went on and played, and I came off, and at that particular time I had bother with like boils, abscesses on, and I had 2 on my arm, on my left arm. And when you're squeezing the bag with your left arm and your jacket rubbed, but these 2 things burst. And as soon as I played, I had it in my face to come up to somebody in the band. I says, I have to go to the first aid. And I headed off to the first aid, and it wasn't 5 minutes until me travel up to the first aid place, which was in the grounds. And I met people from Omagh. And he says, did you hear this big bomb in Omagh? I says, no. I says, I heard nothing. I said, just after coming off playing. So, I says, there's a bomb in Omagh. And I says, I've heard nothing. So I said, but I need to go to the first aid place first. So everything was going through my head. I didn't know what was happening, because Omagh being the town it is, if you know it, it's a small town, like, and if there's a bomb and there are people hurt, well, I would have known a lot of people in Omagh, so I'm bound to know somebody. So I got my arm sorted out anyway, and came back in again, and went back to where the band had congregated, and Clive and all was there. So I said, Clive, there's a bomb in Omagh. I says, don't know what, there's people injured. There could be people dead, I don't know. So Clive and some of his mates, they went outside the ground, and there's a place, I'm sure you heard tell it, it's called the Barraland in Glasgow. And they headed up in there, and there was a pub in it. So they went in there to see if they could use the telephone. So it was just so ironic that the guy, the barman, was from Strabane. And of course, he says, "Aye, sure, come on." He says, "Just heard there's a news flash, come on." And he done his best to get through to him, but there was just no way. The lines were down, things were busy. And the day went on, and obviously you're worried. You're worried sick, you know, because I have so many relations and friends in them. And after the competition was finished and all that, we go back to the bus, and it was one of the people who was over spectating. One of the lads said, he says, "Stanley," he says, "I think I have a bit of bad news for you." I says, "Why? Who is it, or what is it?" He says, "We've heard that your sister Rosemary, sister was traffic warden in the town, and that's the person you see in any of the films that's directing traffic at the bottom of the town. That was my sister, is my sister, I should say." And he says, "I think Rosemary's been killed, you know, it's dead." And I says, you know, good. I just went to pieces, of course, and but I couldn't get through to anybody. And they said anyway, we were going back to a hotel in there, and there was radio on the bus anyway, and the bus driver was trying to get all the news, and there's news flashes coming through, and the bus driver had a phone, and he got a phone call, you know, as we were going down to Ayr from Glasgow. And at that time, I think he said there was 6 people killed, and that the bomb was at the bottom of the town and whatever. So the time we go back to the hotel, the manager, he had heard about it, and he knew we were all from the Omagh area. And he said, "Listen, there's my office, there's the phones, anything you need, please ask." I said, "And I'll do what I can." So the first thing, you know, we tried to get through to different people, but the lanes are all down or busy, just could not get through. And it was, I suppose, 8 o'clock or 8 or 9 o'clock, I think it was. The driver of the bus, he said to me, "Stanley, listen," he says, I've got your brother on the phone here." Now, the fella that was driving, the fella that owned the bus, my brother was married to his cousin, or is married to his cousin, and he was able to get through to his driver because David wanted to talk to me. And of course, then when you hear your brother wants to speak to you, you know there's something wrong, whatever it is. And I knew Colin was at home, and he said to me, "Listen," he says, "Colin, that's my youngest son." He says, "Colin's with me, he's safe." But he says, "Anne's missing. Anne's been missing since the bomb." So I says, "Well, if Anne's missing, it's something bad, because if Anne could talk or Anne could move, Anne she'd be contacting home. She could definitely contacting somebody." And I says, "Well, you know, I'm stuck here. I can do nothing. I can't even get home." And of course, Dave said, "Listen, don't you worry about Hong Kong, safe here, and we'll go look to see where if we can get on." But I had a fair idea. My brother David, like, he's a smart enough guy, he knew rightly what the situation probably was. And it wasn't about 11 o'clock that night that I got the phone call from David to say that our minister, Reverend Myers, had went to the temporary morgue at the army barracks and identified Anne. So that was, I mean, that's just, everything went numb. As you say, Colin, you know, your head's gone, you don't know, and it takes hours and hours for just them words to sink in. And it's, you know, and you pinch yourself and you say, this can't be right, you know, just could, Anne could not be dead. There's no way Anne could, because Anne was a good Christian girl, you know, that's just somebody like me that drank and smoked and backed horses and was carried on, you know. But Anne was just such a different person altogether. But it was true. It was just, I mean, that was just, the reality hadn't set into me, and I couldn't take it in. And so I got the manager of the hotel came, and he was such a good guy right enough. And he phoned the Strathclyde police. I said to him, listen, if you got a helicopter and fly this man and his son home, he says, we'll pay you to do it, but get him home. But there's nothing they could do. He just could not do anything. But what they did do, they got our coach. Everybody packed up that night. We got back during the night on the coach, on the boat, and we got back to Omagh sometime early morning, 8, 9 o'clock, whatever, sometime around that there. And when you came into Omagh, there was no talk on the bus. Everything was quiet, just the noise of the engine of the bus. But when the bus stopped, we didn't come through near the bomb site, kept out the edge of the town. See, everywhere was stopped. Dead silent. There wasn't a dog barking. There wasn't a bird singing. There was nothing. And I mean, this is August time, you know, a beautiful time of the year. And so the time we get home, I get home, and I mean, that's, you just can't describe these things. You know, I mean, your head's so full of everything and full of nothing at the same time. You don't know where you're coming or going. And all I was doing was cigarette. Cigarettes never stop. I never stopped smoking. When that one was out, I lit another one. And that's the way it went on with me. And I didn't know I was doing it, but I had to be doing something. So I got into the house anyway, and of course all my brothers, sisters, and you know, my close relations and all, they came, and I said, right, I have to go and see where Anne is or whatever. Well, the RUC then had a liaison officer who came, and he looked after me. Anything that I needed, he was to see that I got it, or anybody that needed picked up somewhere or lifted or whatever needed within reason, I was to be looked after. And so I went round to the leisure centre in Omagh, and that's where everything was sort of happening. I was to go there first, and then they were going to take me on out to the morgue to identify Anne. And when I went round there and sat there, and as you say, Colin, you know, I mean, you're sitting in tears. You know, you didn't have to say why you were in tears, because everybody was in the same boat as we were. And I saw a lot of people there, but you know, I didn't know anybody. And I did know them, but I just didn't know them. And I stayed there for a good while, and another person who you would have known very well, Stephen, was Father Darcy. Yeah. He was there, good guy. And so I met and talked to him for a fair wee bit of time. And then it came time, I was to go out to the morgue, but whatever happened anyway, they couldn't take me in, couldn't let me in, for whatever reason, I don't know. So I had to go back home, and then on the following day, that was Monday, I had to go back out then again, and the minister went with me. I didn't know what to expect or what the what the protocol was when you went out there, but you had to go to the advisory centre, and this is who you are and all that. And my minister drove me out, and we were accompanied then by a member of the army. An officer actually took us down to the temporary morgue, and we're put into this room, and there was a detective from our UC, and he was sitting with a notepad. He started to question me because I was going to identify Anne, about the shinny marks or birthmarks and all this, and was she taking any medication and all that, And I'm sitting there, I'm ready to explode here. My wife's lying on a slab somewhere, and there, my minister wants me to say who I am. And still no, I had to be questioned. Who are you? You have to describe your wife. Anyway, I don't know what I had to do. Then it was another wee room reserved as a curtain actually. So I was taken in, and Anne was just in a body bag. Anne was lying in a body bag. And now, Anne's coffin was never open. Anne was in such a shape. I'm the only person, apart from the undertaker or the people who carried out the postmortems, would have seen Anne. And the minister, of course. And that was something, like you, Colin, it's something you've seen that will never, ever, ever leave you. Will never leave me, never. Even I'm talking to you here now, I can still see Anne. And that was horrible. Absolutely horrible. Now, Anne was a fantastic person. And I mean, he probably wouldn't have known her, but Anne was always, no matter where she went, Anne was dressed to the best. Makeup, hair done, never went out to the door without her makeup and her hair done. And she said to me, "Geez, if ever I die, you make sure my makeup's on and my hair's done, because I wouldn't want to see anybody." Well, she got her wishes because nobody ever seen her, apart from me. And another thing that she had a terrible thing about her teeth. She was at the dentist more times than enough because she just loved her teeth, and she had perfect teeth. And through Anne's mouth was a bolt about 3 inches long, protruding out of Anne's mouth. That's the way Anne was, and it just angers me so much, and it's not right. People, it's not right. But I have so much hatred on me. It's unbelievable. And you say, I mean, that's 22 years ago. But it's like yesterday. So that was my story, but I mean that's only part of the story. I mean, as you know, we're fighting for truth. We're fighting for truth, and it's not coming. It's not coming.
Thanks very much for your incredible bravery, Stanley. And also, if I take this opportunity to thank you and Michael Gallagher for you've trailblazed for us in Europe before you and Michael started to talk. People in Europe didn't want to know about the Irish problems, so we can't thank you enough for that. John, you've been involved in, as we said in the introduction, in 100 homicides. It never gets easy to hear these stories, and particularly something, as Stanley said, should never have happened. and Colin's case as well, the repercussions, the waves that go out from something like this are horrendous. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I suppose the first thing I want to say anyways to Colin and Stanley is to thank you for sharing your stories with us. You've done it, both of you have done it very eloquently. And what I have been since I've retired and I have got involved in the area of victim support is I've been impressed by a lot of people who tell their story without rancor, without anger. It's powerful. I'm sure that anger has to be there, but you know, when you tell your story, when you've told it here this evening to us, it is certainly I cannot but be impressed, and I see, I suppose, from my years' experience as a policeman, that whether it's terrorist related, or whether it's domestic, or whether it's over feuding or gang crime, it's never ever easy for the people who are the people who are close to the victim and who are left behind, or those people who have witnessed who have actually witnessed it as you, Colin, and experienced it, and it's the same story, the same story, the trauma, you just enter into a never-ending, I suppose, circle or line of things that come up in relation, and it doesn't get any easier. You're talking about 22 years. You're talking about even longer than that, so 1994, 26 years, Colin. And I'm sure it's as raw today as it was on those days. And any of the people that I've dealt with, and I've been a victim, family liaison officer to many victims over the years, and it's all in all, what you've said tonight is what I've been listening to from those people over the years, and that just continues. So it's not easy. There are a few things that both of you have talked about that particularly struck a chord with me, and the thing, Colin, about survival and the guilt that's there because you survived. It doesn't make any sense. It's not rational, but it's real, and I've seen that. And if I can say anything to you in relation to it, it's probably one of the most common themes that come out from victims. Why wasn't it me? Why wasn't I there? Why didn't I go here if I had done this? Parents who left their children out at night, or young adults out at night, and they're, why didn't we keep her in? Why didn't we do this? And that's there. It's actually normal. It may not be rational, but it is normal. It's normal for people to do that, and that's certainly one of the areas. It's an area personally as well that I've had I've experienced myself, and I found it difficult. Obviously, as a policeman over the years, I found it difficult to speak about it, but it's an area where I lost a close colleague back in 1984, and again, I was on holidays. I was away on holidays. May have been in that position if I had been working, because I could have been detailed for that job that he was detailed for. I was at his wedding 5 weeks previously. We were colleagues, but we were also very close friends. And I've lived with that, and very much I can empathise with you in relation to that. You never get over it. You just never get over it. Counselling helps. Back in those days, and I'm sure back in the 90s, counselling really for a 23-year-old wasn't something that you'd be going for. We were male, Irish. We were able to do anything. We didn't see it as that. It's, I suppose, as you get older, you realise it's not a sign of weakness. Actually, it's necessary to get done. So that is certainly with me. The other ones I've jotted down just Stanley in relation to the groups that you're with, and the group that you joined. I think is the Omagh victims. I think Kat Wilkinson is involved. I've had some dealings with Kat. I think she may be involved with you. I'm not 100% sure if that's the group you're talking about. But certainly from my experiences with AdVIC, which is it's a group which we advocate for families of victims of homicide. And again, it's all about really sitting down and crying together and listening and helping out. And you know, the only people that can really tell their story are people who have been through it, and they're the people you can talk to and you can relate to, because you've seen it. You've all experienced it. You're experiencing the same thing. There's no difference, no matter how it happens, no matter who you are. And I often wonder from the sign of, you know, that what you're talking about there around, as a policeman, you know, I wonder if the people who fired those shots, planted that bomb, if they knew the carnage that they were leaving behind them, not the carnage of the pub, O'Toole's pub, not the carnage of the main street in Omagh, but the actual carnage that has been caused within families, within friends, within colleagues, with that and that goes on that never heals.
Gareth, you were a broadcaster. Everybody in Ireland knew your name. You were, and along with being on prime time radio, you also became as you said earlier, a producer, and you produced some of the high-profile programs. But when you hear these stories, can you honestly say that the Irish people in the Republic were informed, or that they actually knew what was really going on in the north?
No.
Do you think that it was the right thing to keep this information from the Irish people? Every time I hear people have discussions down here, it's naive, bordering on the embarrassing, that they know so little about what happened just 50 miles, or even in some cases 20 miles up the road. Do you think that's regrettable?
Oh, I think it's hugely regrettable. I think back in 1974-75, with the Miami Massacre, with Loughinisland, I think with Omagh, which when you look at it, 74 with Dublin and Monaghan, 75 with Miami, and there was always a great saying among people I knew here in the South, you know, thank God we're not living up there. And that was the general feeling. It was like as if civilization stopped 8 miles north of Dundalk. You know, like people down here shopped in Jonesborough, and it was their only real experience of what the north of Ireland was like.
You know, unless the journalists step up to the mark and start telling the truth and informing people about what happened, that it will be up to us, the likes of Eugene Reevy and Joe Campbell and myself, putting our heads together on a Monday and saying, who are we going to, of the 3,800 people that were killed, who are we going to make a program about next week? I mean, we're very happy that the DFA, give us a certain amount of funding so that we can do 25 programs. That's a drop in the ocean. But is that what's necessary, or do you think that the journalists will eventually step up to the mark and become honest journalists? Because whatever we think of Donald Trump, there was, in your time, there was a censorship there, and there was fake news. I mean, how many people in Ireland know about the Reevy brothers killing? How many people know that why Joe's father, Sergeant Joseph Campbell, was murdered? He wasn't murdered because he was a Catholic in the RUC. He was murdered because he did his job. Like John O Mahony was a good cop. Now, we need somebody to tell this. Is it going to be up to us in developing something like this, and other people, young people around the world, far more tech savvy than we are? Or do you have faith in journalism, or is it gone?
That's a brilliant question, and I think you could run an entire weekend conference based on that one question, Stephen. And the sentiments that you're expressing, I completely concur with, in the sense that for most people who graduate from media school now, from journalism college, the majority of them, the ultimate accolade is to get a job as a journalist in RTE. Anybody who studies journalism, anybody who takes an interest in the history of, quote unquote, the Troubles, does so because their blood boils when they read perhaps what they grew up not knowing even happened. I never knew about the Kingsmill Massacre until probably, I'd say, I moved to England in 1983, and I stayed there for 5 years. That was when I first found out about the Kingsmill Massacre, and that's a shocking thing to admit, because in 1976 I was 15, in 1983 I was 22, and it was the year after the Hyde Park and Regent's Park bombings, and it was only when I went to England that I really began to learn the tragic history of Ireland, what I'd actually lived down the road from but never knew anything about. And yes, there were some great maverick journalists in RTE who were always thought of as being a bit, he's a bit off the head. He is, he's fond of the drink. He kind of comes up with these extraordinary stories, but the stories were real. And we got these little snippets on the 6 o'clock news or the 9 o'clock news. And that was the sum total of news coverage, apart from the likes of 7 Days. I think there was Today Tonight. When you look back through the years at some of the old news stuff that we watched on Radio Air and on RTE. But in terms of the future of journalism, first of all, RTE television in its current form is not going to continue. It can't. It exists because there's a specific type of person that watches it, and it's usually of an older denomination, an older age group. Young people don't watch RTE television. Young people don't listen to RTE radio. Young people don't listen to radio. Young people are now driven by the likes of the social media platforms, the likes of Facebook, the likes of Twitter.
Thanks to Colm, Stanley, John and Gareth, and to my Truth and Reconciliation platform colleagues Eugene and Joe. Special thanks to the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade and to Tracy Dempsey for keeping us online. Please visit our website at www.tarp.ie to view this and previous episodes of Speaking for Myself. Until we meet again, stay safe and stay well.